For assessment strategies, this is one that bears directly to the question of just, do you do this the first time through, especially when the first time through is, say, 3 days. It's a whole lot harder to try and change things around. The only one of these, and then I'll turn it over to the other three to chip in and anyone from the audience, but one of the things my students have told me constantly over the years that I've done that they really, really like is go with biweekly quizzes. Now, your first time through, this can be very, very tough. It's a lot of extra work, but it works very well. And so it's a question of if you're prepared with the rest of your course. If you're starting out with a brand new course, don't try this the first time through. It's too much to take on. If you've taught a couple times before and things seem not to be working out that well, biweekly quizzes is a wonderful way of trying to do this. I use the best 5 out of 7 so that you don't have to, that way if people miss a quiz, you don't have to worry about makeups. That's just one of the drop scores. If they have a really bad day, and they can if you choose 7 days over the semester to quiz them, they can have a bad day, but you can get rid of it. So it's the best 5 out of 7 plus a comprehensive final. Yes?
Can you tell them in advance you're going to drop?
Yes, I do. The problem is that if you tell them in advance, the question was, do you tell them in advance that they can drop the best 5 out of 7, is you have to also emphasize that the final is comprehensive, it is cumulative, and it weights the last few weeks of the semester a little bit more. Because otherwise what you'll do is you'll have students that get 5 very good scores, and then they figure, this class is over, I can coast on this. So you at least tell them that, remind them that the final is comprehensive. You can hint highly that it's weighted the last 4 weeks of the semester a little bit more. You don't have to follow through on that. But you just want that, lingering on there so that they don't make a bad decision and simply drop the course early. Yes?
What is the mechanics of it? How long do you...
I try and shoot, it depends a little bit on your class. I try and actually make these quizzes. I try and shoot for 25 minutes, but I usually give the students about 30, 35 minutes. Whatever you do, do it at the end of the period. Don't make the mistake of doing the quiz at the beginning of the period. Once students take a quiz, their minds shut down, they want to leave, they don't want to be back or anything else. So do it at the end of the period. But 25 minutes, my quizzes are only 20-question quizzes. But if you do this over time, it works out pretty well.
Do you use class time to return the quizzes? I mean, how do the students...
Oh, for returning the quizzes inside mine, I just simply, I lay them out on the ground alphabetical order. And have students pick them up the next time around through. I let them have them, but I do it before class starts, so as students come in, they just simply pick it up. Do it in the room because you don't want to leave it out inside the hallway where other people can go through it, but it works out pretty well.
Criticized for taking class time to return quizzes.
I wouldn't do it during class time. I do it before and after class time and let them do it that way. Yes? That entirely depends up to you. We have faculty that have taken the biweekly quiz and make it a strict line that they don't do this at all. Myself, I'm an easy touch. If a student has a good story, I've got no problems with it, and I'll let them do it myself. But you can do it one way or the other. If you want to, you can make it nice and just straightforward.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
So the quick question, what is the philosophy or what is the pro and cons underlying the notion that final examination should be comprehensive?
In my case, it's just a personal favorite that I don't like to have.
The question,
sorry.
we need to repeat the question. And this is a good thing for you to, in this room, most of us, the gear maybe can't hear us, but most of us can hear each other. But in your big lecture hall, when a student asks a question, repeat it so the rest of the class doesn't seem to be on, so the rest of the class can hear it. And the question was, what's the theory or the assumption behind why final exams should be comprehensive?
And that can just be a personal, I try and visit the same sequence of topics throughout the semester. And so I want something at the end that brings everything together.
Well, I'm not talking about your course specifically, but I'm trying to understand what is the pro and con, because if you're going to test students, say 15 chapters, and probably they would just give up. And so what is the trade-off there?
I think the trade-off is one, on an individual exam or quiz, a person could have a bad day, so you give people another chance. Also, by the time you reach the end of the semester, you have a chance to ask questions which pull everything together. And if they study things in September and never have to revisit them, what are they going to come out with in the class? So, you could say all I should do is give a final, right? Because after all, what the end product is what matters, but that puts too much weight on the final. You could say, only give hour exams or quizzes, but that has other issues. So you do a little bit of both, and I think it covers all the bases.
Just another comment on that. I think study determined in order to get information from your long-term memory, you have to hold it more than once. So if you force them to study it for first quiz and then you force them to study it again for the final, then you might actually remember them.
Yeah, totally. If you didn't hear that, the idea is that studying something more than once really ingrains it in your mind a lot better.
One of the things that I do in this, and also your question about the final being overwhelming, is that I actually just allow the final is the same weight as the biweekly quizzes. So it's not something that by the end of the semester, it's not that they still have 50% of their grade to determine. It's just the final is going to cover those things that we follow throughout the whole semester, and it's the same weight as the others.
If I could make a comment about one of the previous questions about dropping quizzes, I think dropping quizzes can work if you have a lot of quizzes. It's a feel-good thing for the students to know that they can have a bad day. In my class, for example, we have huge numbers of students taking these exams, and so we only have 3-hour exams. It's such a production, and there's such a crunch for rooms to give these exams, but we only give 3-hour exams. I used to drop 1-hour exam, just to take some of the pressure off students, but then what I would find would happen is if they did well on 2, they just blew off the other one because they were busy with other things. And so some of the material just didn't get the same kind of emphasis. So I think if you're doing multiple little quizzes, that can work. But if you're in some way constrained to only 3-hour exams, just bear that in mind.
You just made a comment that would like to understand. You said rooms are at a premium. Does this mean you get additional room space when you do?
So yeah, what we do in general chemistry, we fill up our rooms, and we like to have people spread out. So we get extra rooms for our exams. If you're doing everything in your room and you're comfortable with people sitting on top of one another, that's different. But yeah, we get extra rooms.
For chemistry, in part, is because they're a gatekeeper course. They determine access to other programs. You have to have a grade in chemistry. In earth science, we're a little bit more flexible as far as we're just doing this for liberal ed. So there's a slight philosophy.
Room scheduling in the medical school.
Possibly.
Yeah, what I do, I don't get extra rooms either. And what I do, depending on the size of the class, is I have 2 or 3 forms of the exam. And they are exactly the same questions on the same page. What changes is the order of the choices. So there are multiple choices.
Yeah, we also give versions.
Well, I just wanted to show you some numbers on this, but you guys realize, it just breaks the course up a little bit more manageable. Instead of having 3 big exams, you're doing it just 2 weeks at a time. It forces, this is the biggest thing, it forces students to keep up with the material, which is, we all know we're supposed to do it, but I never did when I went to school. I mean, I was a 4.0 student, but I always crammed, and I just did it by the skin of my teeth every night. I didn't keep up with the material. But with 7 biweekly quizzes, you have to keep up with the material. It does also improve the quiz scores. And so in my classes, when I first did 2 midterms and a final, the first midterm was always fell at about 50%, 45 to 50%. People would be discouraged. I'll give them a choice of saying, well, if you can do better on the second midterm, I'll give you half the difference between the 2 scores as a bonus on the first. So, and they'd get up to about 75%. Then when it came to the cumulative final, they dropped all the way back down to 50 to 60% on it. When they did this, instead they start out at about 65%, very quickly climbed to 85, even 90% in bi-week quizzes, and the final, even though it isn't weighted as much for the course, they drop back down a little bit because of the pressures of final exam week, but they still end up in the 80% range as opposed to 50 to 60%. And this was the one I wanted to show you at the end, is that this was one class where I just simply said, all right, at the end of the semester, this is how we did it. And this semester, it was actually, it was a shorter semester, and so we only did 4 out of 6 instead of 5 out of 7. But this was how they voted at the end of the semester. 88% wanted the biweekly quizzes in some form. Some argued whether they shouldn't have any drops, everybody should have to do everything, but they really like this. And the reason why I chose this slide is because this is the worst that the biweekly quiz has ever fared in my classes. Normally, it's in the 98 to 99% range. This class was early on, had more difficulty, but this is the worst the biweekly quiz has ever fared in my classes. So I think it's something that, from my students' perspective, they keep telling me, why doesn't every class at the university do this? If you have the time, if you've established yourself in a class and you can start thinking about this, I think it's something well worth exploring.
But if you're worried about the time, if you don't run your quizzes in an open book, you can do it online.
Right. With Moodle and other things, so the idea was that if you're worried about time in class, which this does take a little bit more time in class, you can do a lot of this on Moodle, open book, take-home exams instead. But just breaking your semester up really helps an awful